Hello, it's Dawn Michelle from Boho Tarot, and welcome to another mod with me. Today we are going to be trimming the Egyptian Tarot. So this is a deck that I actually picked up while on vacation at a local metaphysical shop when I was in San Francisco. And so it was one that I hadn't really, to be honest, intended on purchasing, but I also purchased the Isis Oracle at the same time, and that was a deck that I did want, the little pocket edition, and I thought these two might go really well together, and honestly, I was just looking for some new treasures to purchase while I was on vacation and bring back with me. So I went ahead and picked up the Egyptian Tarot. I'm not sure how long this deck has been out. This printing says 2021, so it's a fairly new edition. I love Lo Scarabeo cardstock. Can I just say, like, they have mastered the cardstock thing with this particular deck. It's just so beautiful to work with. It's so beautiful to shuffle. And so I really enjoy working with it. However, I thought, the multiple language titles, although they are very unobtrusive in this deck, I thought really just as a fun mod project, I would look at just trimming them off. I do actually like the black borders around this deck, and I think that because we have kind of this old linen parchment kind of paper looking thing going on with the distress around the sides, I wouldn't want to cut that off because I think that adds to the charm of the deck. But I'm just thinking maybe just trimming off that top and bottom and just, making the deck a little bit smaller is always good in my opinion, but a little bit more squarish, and just taking off these multiple titles at the top and bottom. Now again, I actually really don't mind the titles in this particular deck, but the deck is very pippish, as you can see looking at these pentacles here. The only thing that might throw me is the majors and the quartz. So what I might do is just get out my trusty Sharpie and make a little notation somewhere on the card, like I did with the Dark Grimoire Tarot. And I just so that I have that for those particular things. I don't really think I need it on the numbered minors because it is pretty obvious because it's a pip deck. This is 2 wands, 7 pentacles, 3 swords, 1 pentacle. This is actually quite a lovely deck, and I've really been enjoying working with it. The backs are quite beautiful. Now, when I cut into the backs, right, I am going to be kind of messing up this pretty border thing they have going on the back, but like I've said a million times before, I really don't pay that much attention to the backs. Although I think if you just took this deck and edged it in black, that would be totally awesome too. But really just as a fun project, this is really what it is. Kind of a creative project, a way to bond with this deck, and just to, have a little fun being creative with my tarot deck. So I have just a Sharpie fine point here that I thought I might go through and just write maybe the numbers. Okay, so about halfway through the numbering, I changed my mind and decided I just wanted to write on the cards. So I realized that on the bottom of most every card, there is space for me to just write what's on there. And it does stand out a little bit more than just those numbers, which sometimes can be hard to pick out on the card. And so for the majors, I just wrote, whatever the major arcana was. So we had the Priestess and the Fool and Justice. You can see they're all down here in the corner. And then I did the same for the court. So we have, kings and knights and queens. And I think their elemental symbols are pretty distinguishable, so I don't think I'm going to have any trouble with that whatsoever. I decided not to number or do anything with the numbered minors because I can clearly see how many of whatever thing it is on there because these are very pip style cards. The other thing that I wanted to note is on this particular cardstock, or this Lo Scarabeo cardstock, using my Sharpie fine point, ultra fine point, I should say, I was able to just take a white eraser and erase my words seamlessly. So where I had originally wrote like the 14 for the kings, I just took the eraser and literally erased it right off the front of the card and rewrote the word that I wanted on there. Okay, so I have my usual tools here. I have my Fiskars cutter. I have my triangle to create the little cradle that I'm going to use to basically measure each card, my corner rounder for when it's done, and I'm guessing I'm probably just going to edge it in black, but you know, we'll see. I never really decide on a color until I'm done through the whole trimming process because I might change my mind. So the first thing that I'm going to do is actually just cut off the bottom, and I'm going to start with that because that is all in a totally different language, and I have no idea what it says. I mean, I'm sure it says the moon, but in this particular case, but it's not a language that I even can read, so I'm just gonna go ahead and chop that off on this whole deck. And I am gonna just follow my usual process here of, you know, using my cradle, creating a little guide. These are thinner cards, so I want to make sure that I am, you know, being real mindful to not let it slide under my triangle ruler. I think that should be good because I want to just cut that word right off. Every time I forget this one, every time. Okay, so see, now that I'm looking at that, that is going to get me real close to my text. And I'm thinking that I could even slide over just a tiny bit, like maybe line the card up right there. Okay, just checking to make sure that I got that ruler straight so that I get a straight line down at the bottom. And I'm going to check. That should just cut off those words. That is a major, so let's just check one of the minors just to be sure, because I always like to double check. Actually, the printing on Los Scarabeo decks is usually pretty straight. I have less trouble with their decks than others, I feel like. Oh, that was a major card too. Look what I did. Let's try this one. Okay, that's still looking good. I should just be cutting off just the top of those words. So let's go ahead and give it a go. And there it is. I should have moved that card out of the way because I could have accidentally cut through it. Thankfully, I didn't. Okay, so that's just going to give me a real slim border on the bottom. Here's the words that I cut off, and then you can see, of course, the back. I'm going to have a little bit of a wonkiness going on there, but that's okay. I don't mind. I'm okay with that. The back of the cards never bother me much because, as I've mentioned many times, I don't really lay them face down. Now you can see here that this looks crooked, but I think that's because the artwork is, you know, torn paper. Okay, so I got the bottoms all trimmed off. Look how nice and straight that is. Sorry, the sun is starting to come through the window, so look, little bits of sun. In March, that's exciting. Anyway, here's what the bottoms look like. You can see that I basically just now have a real thin, or sometimes thicker, depending on where the artwork sits on the card, black border down at the bottom, but no words. So that's kind of nice just to have that cleaned up there. So now I'm gonna go ahead and do the same on the top. And we're just gonna hope that the sun doesn't bother the camera too much because it started to get pretty warm in here. So I'm going to slide this in here. The other thing I want to mention is that because this cardstock is really quite thin and flexible, I did have to make sure I kept multiple points of contact down on the card in order to keep it from sliding around on me. Okay, so I think that's good. I kind of want to check the this major here first, just to make sure. Yep, see, I am literally just on the other side of that. Look how cool. I like it. Okay, so let me try this guy, this little numbered minor, just to, again, make sure that I'm in a good spot. And I can always adjust if I need to, you know, once I've going through here. Let's find a, just to make sure, let's find a court card. Should be good. And there we go. Okay, I'm gonna finish trimming the deck up and I'm going to corn around it and then we will check back in. Okay, sorry, the sun is coming through, but oh my goodness, look at these. I think these look amazing like this. I'm super, super thrilled. This was kind of exactly what I envisioned them looking like, just being really that beautiful imagery and taking away all that text so I can really focus on the artwork, and then just having those little notations on the few cards that I need until I really get comfortable and familiar with this deck and I can just erase them with my little white eraser. So I think they came out really well. I did end up just using the small corner rounder on them because I didn't want to cut too much into the little parchment areas, and I didn't want the rounding to be really noticeable. I wanted to keep it really square. So here is what the backs ended up looking like, which I think actually look really good. It just cut off the top and bottom, so now it just looks like it has the border on the sides, and I think it actually looks intentional. Didn't even really cut into the design or anything too much. It got real close on the top one, but so I guess they are slightly off now because of course those top titles are always bigger than the bottom ones when they put the main titles up there. But if you read reversals, it might throw you, but I don't, and I don't think that, I think you'd really have to look. I think you'd really have to pay attention. But I have to say, like, I'm so pleased with how these came out. This was exactly what I was hoping for. We're actually going to do a little spread at the end with the Isis Oracle because that's what I bought this deck to work with. And I think they are like going to be real cool now because they're close to the same size as the Pocket Isis Oracle. But before we do that, I want to get it edged because I just feel like that'll really finish it off. Let's flip it over, and I think what I want to do, I know I'd said black, but we have the black border and the black side borders on the back and the black borders on the front. And I oftentimes like to do a contrasting color on the sides just so that it doesn't like completely just go away. Like it actually brings some interest to the sides, and I just enjoy that. That's just my preference. Basic black is always good. The other thing is that if I'm thinking about a color and I'm not totally sure, I can almost always like try the color first, and if it doesn't work and I don't like it, I can always revert to black, right? So black is kind of always my backup. If I completely mess up an edging, I know I can always throw some black over it and cover it up. So I've got my little thing of Tombows here, and I'm thinking actually brown would be really cool. Like I think I want to pull in this brown color, kind of bronzy brown color, and I used a similar color on the Isis Oracle because of course I've already edged it. Like that would be kind of cool, but that marker is pretty low. And it almost always comes out darker on the card. So I have saved some little bits here to go over. I think this is the color I used on the Isis Oracle, which I mean, I think that would work really well, but I kind of wanted to go more brown. I don't really want it to like be completely matchy. So now I'm just kind of trying to find a brown color that I like because, you know, that's a thing. So you can see, I don't know if you can tell, but some of these markers are like real chewed up. And that's too bad because I actually really like that one. Okay, so now I've got like a ton of browns and I have no idea which one I was wanting. I think I was wanting this one, but like I'm really not sure that that one's gonna last. Let's go ahead and try it on one of these little snippets here just to see how it's gonna go on. So that is like a pretty nice dark brown. I think I like that. This is a Tombow 977. So I'm gonna give that a try. And again, like I said, I can always go over it with some distressed ink. I can also, to darken it up, I can also just, if I don't like don't like the color, I can go over it in basic black and you know, that'll take care of it. So I'm just gonna do my usual and I'm gonna basically just color my deck here, right? And I'm just gonna run the marker along the edge, trying to stay out of the sunbeams, but not sure I'm succeeding. So there's that. And even though Tombow doesn't really bleed, I do always just, I don't know if it's habit or just makes me feel better, but I do always go and run a paper towel along the edge, because you can see there, like I did get some off, right? And I'd rather it go off on the paper towel than on my hands. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and finish up edging this deck, and then we will check back in and see how it looks. It's been actually a couple of days now since I did this because, you know, life, and sometimes this is what happens. I start a mod and need to kind of set it aside for a few days while I work on some other things. But anyway, I got it edged in the marker, and again, I used the Tombow 977. Now this marker is kind of wearing down, you know, it's getting to the point where it's about out of ink. So there are a few places where it didn't quite fill in as much as I was hoping it would. But I do think that the color is really cool. I like that it picks up that brown. But since it didn't quite fill in as much as I thought it would, or as much as I was hoping, I thought maybe I'd just layer a little bit of distressed ink over the top, just to kind of darken it up a little bit and fill in wherever there might be some holes left. So I've just got my little tab of distressed ink here, and probably just use one of these makeup sponges, and we'll just go with the vintage photo, because again, I don't want it black, but I just do want to darken it up. So we'll see how that goes. Generally with this, I'm just going to take a chunk of it and do a chunk at a time, because the distressed ink does not dry instantly, and it also doesn't bleed too bad between the cards, so I can feel pretty confident doing a chunk, although I will wipe them all off in between. I'm going to move this so that it's not in my way, and I have some space to work here. So as you can maybe see, it didn't quite fill in 100%. So we're just going to basically take the deck here and move this out of the way so I have some space to work. And I'm just going to kind of darken it up with the vintage photo. Actually don't want to stick my finger in the gold, so we'll get a clean one. Sometimes this works well and sometimes it doesn't. It just kind of depends. I always try the makeup sponge first because it keeps me from going a little too overboard, but sometimes it doesn't pick up enough ink. But this looks like it's actually filling in really well, so because again, I don't really want to change the color too much. I just want to fill it in, and I just want to darken it. So let's take a look at a chunk here. So you can see that just that little bit of wiping that distress ink on really filled it in nicely and just darkened it up just a tad. So this is actually a practice I like to do quite often with my cards, where I will use the marker as a base coat, and then I will come in with the distressed ink and just kind of fill in or add some layer to it, and it works really well for that. So I'm just going to go ahead and layer these on. Now, of course, when I flip this around, if I'm not careful, I will end up with distressed ink all over my fingers. And that's okay. So this is just the quick and easy little process I'm going to use to just kind of fill that color in a little bit more and darken it up. As long as you hold them nice and tight with the distressed ink, it works pretty well. It's definitely not a full color saturation with the distressed ink, because that's not what it's meant for. It is meant to just kind of distress, fade, add a layer to whatever it is that you're working on. See, like if you were to just apply that without the base coat on it, you would definitely see where that would come through. So now that I've done that, I am just going to take a paper towel and run it along the edge, just to make sure that if I did get any smear in between, which I can see a little bit there, that I'm getting it off the card. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this up, and then we'll take a look at the whole deck. Okay, I've got the whole deck modified, so I have edged it, trimmed it, taken the titles off the top and bottom, and just wrote in little titles, unobtrusive, down at the bottom for the quartz and the majors, just until I get a chance to really get to know them really well. The great thing is with the Sharpie on this particular cardstock, I can just take an eraser and actually erase the text when I'm done with it. So if it hasn't worn off by the time I feel like I really know this deck, I can just take my eraser and go ahead and erase that. So here's the original title card, so you can see how much I actually took off, which, you know, is quite a bit. But it's still a really, really great size right now. So I'm really happy with the way it turned out. I think it looks really cool. It's much less distracting now without all that text on there. Although, I mean, it wasn't that bad to begin with, just, you know, in terms of a low Scarabeo deck or their older decks. It really wasn't that bad, but I think it just looks so much cleaner, so much nicer this way. There is a lot of texture, and even though these are very pippish cards, there is still a lot going on within the cards. So we have textured background, and we have all this pattern along the side, all this tattered look. You know, we have some hieroglyphs and the actual pips, and then usually some sort of little embellishment to kind of key us into the energy. And so there's actually quite a bit going on in these cards, particularly in the majors and the quartz. And so I think taking those titles off just really helped kind of hone in on the artwork itself. So the other thing I did was grab my little pocket Isis Oracle, because that is what I bought this deck to work with. And so I just want to go ahead and give it a little shuffle and see how they look together. So because I used those measurements and it's pretty straight, it does still shuffle pretty well. I mean, not as 100% as good as it did before, but it's pretty close. So I'm fine with it. It's actually a really nice size now. And even though you can see like it's clumping up a little bit, it still shuffles pretty well. And of course, because it's small, I can actually overhand it both ways, which is really nice. This is my preference, to overhand it long ways when I can actually get the cards in my hand, but that's not often the case unless I'm working with like a mini deck or a pocket deck. So what I like to do is do my usual little 3-card reading with this. And I have the little pocket edition that has the messages on the back. I have already edged this one in kind of like a sort of a goldy color. It is another Tombow. I'll try to look up the number and leave it below for you as well in case you are interested. So I'm just going to give this little pocket deck a shuffle. Okay, so we've got, I've got 2 cards there. So there's our central focus card, which is Pillar of Light. Completely embraced by divine protection. That's beautiful. So let's see what message we have in regards to Pillar of Light. And we'll go ahead and lay these out. Oh, they are almost the same size now. How cool is that? So yeah, I think those look pretty good. We got the Knight of Wands, I do believe those are, and the Ace of Swords, the Pillar of Light in the center. How beautiful is that? So I think that these decks are going to work really well together, especially now that I've actually trimmed the Egyptian Tarot to be close to the same size as the little pocket oracle here, which is super cool. I really enjoy these little smaller size decks, so that definitely is a bonus whenever I can take one of my tarot decks and, you know, make it a little bit smaller, a little bit easier for me to use. You know, big cards are nice when we get that really, really detailed artwork, but this is more of a practical size for me. It actually is, you know, functions better as just an everyday reader when it's smaller and I can easily shuffle it and work with it. So yeah, I'm really happy with the way that this turned out. I think they look pretty nice. I like them being completely kind of not, it's not borderless now, but I've taken off all the extra text and just wrote my own in. Ooh, there's some little Roman numerals I forgot to erase. Let's just put this to, I just have a little white eraser here. It's gonna shake the table, but there we go. Now it's gone. So I just have Judgment. So when I get real familiar with this deck and I know that every time I pulled this card that this is Judgment, I can just erase that Judgment down there. Same with like the Empress here. When I really get to know this deck well and know that that is who that is. So it'll be a really beautiful pictorial deck at that point, which I think actually works really well with this type of imagery because, you know, hieroglyphs, and that is a pictorial language. And I think it'll be really cool to have my Egyptian tarot be completely pictorial as soon as I get really familiar with the cards. So anyway, that is a look at trimming and edging the Egyptian tarot. I do have purchase links in the description box below if you're interested in picking up a copy for yourself. And I do also have links for a proper mod tutorial. So if you're looking for a step-by-step instructional video on how to modify your tarot deck, I do have a whole playlist as well as a couple of tutorials listed in the description box below. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you again soon in another video.